There was the princess the world saw, the woman standing beside the British royal family, the woman photographed everywhere she went, the woman whose smile appeared on the magazine covers around the world. But behind that public image was another Diana, a woman who wrote, a woman who expressed feelings privately away from television cameras and newspaper headlines. And over the years, letters and personal correspondence associated with Princess Diana have offered historians and biographers a different glimpse into her life. Not the Diana created by headlines, not the Diana portrayed by photographers, but Diana in her own words. What did those private writings reveal? Were they simply personal messages between friends and family? Or did they expose the enormous pressure surrounding one of the most famous women of the 20th century? Before Diana became one of the most photographed women in history, she was simply Diana Spencer. Born in 1961, she grew up in an aristocratic British family. Her life changed dramatically when her relationship with Prince Charles became public. In 1981, the world watched as the young Diana married the heir to the British throne. She was only 20 years old. The wedding became a global spectacle. Millions watched. Newspapers filled their front pages with photographs of the young princess, and Diana quickly became an international celebrity. But fame came with an extraordinary price. Every dress she wore could become a headline. Every expression on her face could be analyzed. Every movement could attract photographers. Diana was no longer simply a person. She had become an image, and that distinction would become increasingly important throughout her life. Because behind the image was a human being trying to understand her new world. Today, we live in an age of instant communication text, emails, social media, private messages that can become public within seconds. But Diana lived in a different era. A handwritten letter required time. You had to sit down, think about what you wanted to say, write it, send it, and wait. That makes personal correspondence historically fascinating. A public speech is carefully prepared. An interview is conducted with cameras present. But a private letter can reveal a different side of a person. Their fears, their gratitude, their frustrations, their relationships, their sense of humor, their hopes. Diana's correspondence has therefore attracted enormous interest. But there is an important distinction we need to make. Not every letter or quotation attributed to Princess Diana online is authentic. Over the years, countless stories have circulated about secret letters, hidden messages, and supposed revelations. Some claims are documented, others are disputed, and some are simply internet mythology. So, in this documentary, we need to separate the historical record from speculation. Because the real story is fascinating enough without inventing anything. Imagine waking up and knowing that photographers may be waiting outside. Imagine going to dinner and wondering whether someone is watching. Imagine having an argument with someone you love and knowing that the entire world might eventually hear about it. This was increasingly Diana's reality. The media's fascination with her was extraordinary. She became one of the most recognizable people on earth. Her clothes became fashion trends, her hairstyles were copied, her charitable work received international attention, and yet the more famous she became, the more difficult privacy became. This contradiction followed Diana throughout her life. She wanted to use her position to help people, but the same position made it almost impossible for her to live normally. Her private life became public entertainment, and her marriage became the subject of relentless speculation. As her relationship with Prince Charles became increasingly troubled, Diana's public role and private emotional world became moving further apart. The princess photographed at official events could look composed, but the private person could be experiencing something very different. That contrast is one of the reasons her correspondence remains so interesting. Diana's private correspondence has been used by biographers and historians to understand the relationships that were difficult to see from the outside. Letters could reveal affection, They could reveal gratitude. They could reveal the importance Diana placed on people she trusted. And they could also reveal how deeply personal relationships mattered to her. This is where the phrase secret letters can become misleading. The most interesting aspect isn't necessarily that the letters contain some enormous hidden conspiracy, it is that they could reveal the ordinary human emotions behind an extraordinary public life. And in her private correspondence, we sometimes get a glimpse of the person between those two words. That is what makes the letters historically valuable. They don't necessarily rewrite everything we know about her. Instead, they can add anything, another layer. As the years passed, Anna's relationship with the institutions surrounding her became increasingly complicated. She was expected to represent tradition, but she was also becoming an increasingly independent public figure. She developed a powerful personal connection with ordinary people. She visited hospitals, she supported humanitarian causes, she worked with charities. She became particularly associated with campaigns and causes that brought global attention to people who were often ignored. This created a new kind of royal celebrity. Diana wasn't simply attending ceremonies, she was trying to use her visibility to create emotional connections with people. And this was one reason her popularity became so extraordinary. The public often felt that she understood them, but that popularity also made her private life even more valuable to the media. Photographs were worth money, stories were worth money, and Diana's personal relationships became intensely scrutinized. The boundary between public interest and private life became increasingly difficult to define. This is where the story becomes particularly interesting. Whenever a famous person dies, their private documents often become surrounded by mystery. People search for hidden meanings. They look for clues. They ask whether something important was concealed. Princess Diana's death in Paris in 1997 intensified that fascination enormously. Almost immediately, questions and theories began circulating. What happened? Who was responsible? Was there something the public didn't know? And could Diana's private writings provide an answer? But this is where responsible historical storytelling matters. A letter should not automatically be treated as evidence of a conspiracy. A personal fear is not necessarily a prediction. A private comment is not automatically proof of a future event. An unattributed quotation circulating online is not automatically authentic. The historical record must come first. Diana's letters can tell us about Diana. They can reveal relationships, emotions, and circumstances. But they should not be forced to prove something they cannot prove. Sometimes the truth is less sensational than a conspiracy theory, and yet it can be far more powerful. Perhaps the greatest value of Diana's correspondence is not discovering a hidden scandal. It is discovering the human being behind the title. Princess Diana was constantly photographed, but photographs capture only a moment. A letter can capture a thought. A photograph can show a smile. Words can tell us why someone was smiling. A photograph can show a person standing in a crowd. A letter can reveal who that person trusted when the crowd disappeared. That is why private writings are so valuable to historians. They bring us closer to the person. Not perfectly, not completely, but closer. Diana's life was filled with contradictions. She was extraordinarily famous but desperately sought privacy. She was surrounded by people but could still experience isolation. She belonged to one of the world's most powerful families but struggled with the limitations that came with that position. And she became one of the world's most influential humanitarian figures while still being pursued relentlessly by the media. Her letters belong to that complicated story. By the 1990s, Dana had transformed. She was no longer simply the shy young woman who had entered royal family in 1981. She had developed her own public identity. She had become a mother, a humanitarian, a global celebrity, and an independent woman navigating life outside the traditional royal structure. Her humanitarian work increasingly became central to her identity. She traveled internationally, and in August 1997, Diana traveled to Paris. Within days, the world would change forever. Princess Diana died in Paris on August 31, 1997. She was only 36 years old. The shock was felt around the world. Millions mourned someone they had never personally met. And decades later, interest in Diana has never completely disappeared. Her photographs remain famous, her fashion remains influential, her humanitarian work continues to be remembered, and her private words continue to attract attention. But perhaps the most important lesson from those words is not that they contain some mysterious secret. It is that they remind us that behind every historical icon is a human being, a person with fears, a person with hopes, a person searching for love, trust, independence, and meaning. Princess Diana spent much of her life being watched, but in her private correspondence, we sometimes get a chance to listen. And perhaps that is the real secret behind the letters. Not what they reveal about a princess, but what they reveal about the woman, Princess Diana. A woman the world thought it knew, but perhaps never completely did. History remembers the photograph, but sometimes the words tell us who was behind it.